According to the National Geographic, ocean plastic is estimated to kill millions of marine animals and seabirds every year. And scientists predict that by 2050, plastic will outweigh the number of fish in the entire ocean. Plastics often break down into smaller and smaller particles, called microplastics, which can be ingested by both animals and people and remain in our environment for hundreds of years or longer. Here are a few helpful tips on how you can help stop the tide on plastic pollution. Tip 1. Bring reusable bags when grocery shopping. Tip 2. Avoid using plastic straws or use reusable straws when having a drink. Tip 3. Drink from a reusable water bottle instead of buying individual bottles. Tip 4. Tell your friends and family about the effects of single-use plastics. You can help reduce the amount of single-use plastics by spreading the word and going green. For more information and to take the pledge, visit reduceyourusetambabay.org.
These are the jobs you may not see every day, but just know we're working hard to make Hillsborough County a better place to live, work, and play. Subscribe to our YouTube page for more great county-related videos, only on HTV.
Don't let mosquitoes ruin your day. Fight the bite by removing standing water on your property. Standing water of any kind is a breeding ground for mosquitoes. Do your part and help reduce the mosquito population.
Visit hcfl.gov/fightthebite.
Good morning and welcome to Hillsborough Transportation Planning and Organization, a meeting for May 8, 2024. Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, Gail. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Myers,
Here.
Mayor Ross, Commissioner Owen,
Here.
Commissioner Wastel,
Here.
Commissioner Cohen,
Here.
Commissioner Kemp, Councilmember Clendenin,
Here.
Councilmember Hurtak, Councilmember Maniscalco, Mayor Kilton,
Here.
School Board Member Rendon, Charles Klug, Gina Dew, Bob Fry, Scott Drainville, and Justin Willits. I do believe they are excused. Planning Commissioner Joseph.
Here.
We do have an in-person quorum.
Okay, and Gail, please add Mayor Ross has joined. Thank you. Do we have approval of the minutes for April?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposes? That motion is carried. We have two speakers for public comments. Good morning, Rick Fernandez.
Morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
Barely. Can you turn your volume up a little bit? Thank you.
That better?
Yes.
Okay. I'll try to project. Appreciate you recognizing me. Introduction, my name's Rick Fernandez, Tampa Heights Civic Association President. I'm back here today to report on the status of discussions regarding the Robles Park interstate barrier. We've been here before you multiple times at this point, so I won't get into any further detail. Yesterday, we met at the park for what I believe was the third time. This time, we met with representatives of the DOT, City of Tampa, MPO board member and City Council Chair Guido Maniscalco and his administrative aide, Lisa Edwards, without whose help we probably would not have gotten the meeting together. So special thanks to her. Also, Lena Young Green from the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association and of our board at the Civic Association, the Senior Civic, and then myself. We met for about an hour at the park. I came away with the following understandings, all of which will be confirmed with the attendees. The city and FDOT are to coordinate efforts in developing plans for a hardy landscape buffer. That I am told is the appropriate term for what we've been looking for instead of a green wall. These coordinated efforts would include the community, of course. We're talking about coordination for a landscape plan, blending plantings on both the DOT and City of Tampa right-of-way on either side of Elmore, which is the frontage road along the eastern perimeter of the park. Discussions will have to be had regarding funding, the actual landscape planning process, and also acquisition of plants and trees. We are still pending discussions regarding the scale and the facade treatments for whatever solid barrier is ultimately to be built on the other side of that hardy landscape buffer. So those discussions will be ongoing. We're told that by way of timeline, this project, or at least this portion of the wall, will be completed essentially within the next 2 months. So it is time sensitive, and we certainly intend to stay on it as intently as possible during that period of time. I appreciate the help of the councilman, Maniscalco, in joining us in these discussions, and I'll tender whatever time I have left. Thank you.
Thank you. Lena Young Green, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good, you could hear me.
Yes.
Thank you for another opportunity to come to speak before you. I was a part of that meeting, as Rick Fernandez reported from yesterday. And also, I was delighted to have a meeting with Councilwoman Lynn Hurtak, and we talked about several of the options that are possible. And she's also pursuing finding out how we could address this issue. And we appreciate all of the help and support. I am still puzzled about why we are choosing to build a wall that costs more than a green buffer. And I don't understand why we would make the choice of paying for something that's more expensive than something that's of a lesser cost has way more benefits, such as cleaning air, water, soil, and filter for storm winds when we have hurricanes, as well as affecting noises. I still believe that the best approach is having a totally green wall. Had it not been, had it only been for safety issues, DOT would not have provided us with that option 2 years ago. At the same time, I appreciate all that's being done to address the concerns that we bring forward. And I'm still concerned about the health of our community as we address the impact of heat islands in our community. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you.
And thank you, and thanks to all board members who was involved with the meeting on yesterday. Again, thank you. We're going to move right into committee reports and advanced comments. Again, Rick Fernandez, Chair.
Thank you,
Good
Chair.
morning.
Good morning. This is the CAC report on the May 1 meeting of the committee. We had 2 action items presented to the CAC, both of which I believe are on your board agenda today. The first was the Access 2050 Plan Needs Assessment for Major Projects, Performance Data. Mr. Greg Kern from the Gresham Smith firm presented this item. I think generally speaking, we felt the presentation was very detailed. However, in some components was not yet completed. It provided information on the modeling process and how performance data was calculated. CAC members expressed concerns regarding the productivity saved while taking transit, the costs associated with roadways and cars, and the projects that did not have costs and therefore no cost benefit ratio reported in the report. We were asked to accept this report, and we took a roll call vote, and we chose not to accept the report as presented at the May 1 meeting. Speaking for myself as one of the nay votes on that, my reason was simply because the report was not presented as complete. There were some items that were still pending. Perhaps those items have been completed and will be presented to you in total today. The second action item presented to us was the 2024 State of the System report. The staff presented this item, which is, again, as I said, on today's agenda for the board. It included an overview of the state of the transportation system, such as pavement condition, crash trends, transit ridership, and access to pedestrian and bicycle facilities. The CAC voted unanimously to approve this item and move it forward to your consideration. There was one status report presented. That was the draft of the fiscal year 2024-25 TIP update. This was presented in preparation for next month's full TIP presentation, and of course the June 12 public hearing. Staff presented the first look to us on May 1st, focusing on newly added or changed projects. CAC members expressed their appreciation for how the information is presented and noted this would be further discussed at our next meeting. Finally, I will just make note of something I've mentioned at previous meetings concerning vacancies on the CAC. We have several at-large vacancies, a group of which I believe are pending approval on your consent agenda today. So that was good news. But we still have vacancies pending for HART and for the Planning Commission. I don't know where we are in the pipeline for those two, but we certainly welcome those additions when they come. That's all I have. There is a written report supporting all of this in your agenda package, I understand. And if there are any questions, I'll be happy to try to field them. Otherwise, respectfully submitted.
Thank you. Good morning, Harmony.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Harmony McGee, TPO staff. Regarding today's action items, as you have heard, the CAC chose not to accept the 2050 Plan Needs Assessment for Major Projects Performance Data. However, the Technical Advisory Committee did move to accept it. The Technical Advisory and Citizen Advisory Committees also accepted the 2024 State of the System report. Comments were received on social media from Dave Coleman inquiring about the location of the TPO board meetings. TPO staff responded by providing the location information as well as updating the social media posts to make this information more visible to the public. In response to one of our Zoo Tampa collaboration posts, helping to advocate for road safety to protect local wildlife, Dave Coleman shared some crash statistics, further emphasizing the need for greater roadway safety in the county. On the Planning Commission Facebook page, we received comments in response to the future land use meeting. Brian Boker shared some goals he would like to see implemented, such as creating a safe and livable community that provides greater levels of housing, jobs, services, and transportation accessibility. Josie Gentry also expressed her concerns for the Valrico and Plant City areas, stating that the commute time to reach local businesses had become a burden for many in that area and would like to see these concerns prioritized in the planning process. Additionally, Mike Lamarca and Dave Coleman shared comments regarding their support of not expanding the urban service boundary. This concludes my report.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll move right into our consent agenda. Have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposes? Motion is carried. Thank you. Move right into our action items. Sarah Caper, good morning.
Good morning. Sarah Caper, TPO staff. Thank you for having me and for considering the fiscal year 2025 and 2026 Unified Planning Work Program adoption. This agenda item was included in draft form in your March agenda packet, and then Amber Simmons presented on it at your meeting in April. A little bit about the Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP. It is one of the core products that is required of MPOs throughout the country. It documents and coordinates the federal and state funding that we receive as the MPO for transportation planning that we conduct ourselves, and also coordinating what happens from a planning perspective with FDOT, HART, and the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged, which we also receive planning funds for that program as well. The UPWP complies with the federal and state rules that are outlined for us. It's required to outline the major transportation planning tasks that we'll conduct. It is effectively the TPO's budget for what we do with our staff and consulting dollars. And this UPWP would be effective from July 1st of this year through June 30th of 2026. The UPWP itself has 8 tasks that are outlined here that describe the types of activities that we will be conducting for transportation planning. So you can see here the first task is transportation planning management, such as grants management and the UPWP itself. The second task is related to system and corridor planning and complete streets. The third is the long-range transportation plan and data management. The fourth is the transportation improvement plan and transportation improvement program. The fifth is related to all of our public participation efforts and supporting our various committees and meetings. The sixth is local, regional, and state coordination and planning. This is the work we do with the partner MPOs in the region. Task 7 is a new task for us this year, which is the exploration of a regional MPO. Separating it out into its own task allows us to track the efforts that we're doing specifically related to this. And then task 8 is the Suncoast Transportation Planning Association and Regional Shared Task. And this was related to the funding that gets shared between the MPOs for this effort. Within all of these tasks, we discuss our projects that we anticipate doing, This includes critical path projects or things that we're required to do or have already started and committed funding towards. It includes requests that we've received from our partners and also those projects that support the Plan Hillsborough Strategic Plan. Here is the budget in the UPWP. This reflects the information that you saw at your April meeting as well. It describes the funding that we'll receive in fiscal year 25 and 26 for the Consolidated Planning Grant, which is PL and FTA dollars, for Surface Transportation or SU dollars, and then the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged funding. The deobligated funds, which you took action on in April, are noted here with the asterisk, and they have been incorporated into the budget for these different tasks. A little bit on how we got here. In March, we submitted the draft for FDOT's review per the state guidelines. In April, the committees and required agencies provided feedback to us, and we also presented it to you for your feedback. We're here before you today asking for your approval, and we'll submit it to FDOT by the required deadline of May 15th. And then July 1st, this UPWP would become effective. Here's a summary of the projects that we did in fiscal year 23 and 24, so the UPWP that is current as of today and ends at the end of June of this year. You can see some of the items here include the State of the System report, which we do each year and you'll have on your agenda today. We did a High Injury Network Vision Zero workshop. We've done work related to the Transportation Disadvantage Program, such as the Community Transportation Coordinator evaluation. We've also done projects that support the Long-Range Transportation Plan, the needs assessments, for example, for equity, real choices when not driving, major investments for economic growth, and state of good repair and resilience. And you can see here some additional examples of what we've done. We also call out that the state DBE goal is 10.65, and our current 2-year average DBE participation is 13% for eligible DBE projects. Here's a look at some of the critical path projects that are included in this draft UPWP. These are projects that we're either required to do per state and federal guidelines, or they're things we've already started and committed funding towards. So some examples of that are continuing the State of the System report in the future years, the Transportation Disadvantaged Service Plan and the annual CTC evaluation, that's part of the TD program, continuing the work with the Suncoast Transportation Planning Alliance and our regional partners. We also have items here that are related to the Long-Range Transportation Plan, which will be adopted in the fiscal year 25 and 26 long-range UPWP. So you can see here there are tasks related to the modeling, public outreach and engagement, regional planning, and then the document production and adoption. We also reached out to our partners to see if there were any requests for planning and analysis to include in this UPWP. We have included some of what we heard here, such as the transit analysis, projects from HART, multimodal planning from Temple Terrace, conducting next steps for the Plant City Trail Connector, looking at different area plans, conducting before and after studies and providing templates for Vision Zero focused analysis, looking at the area around the Brightline station to do multimodal study of how people can get there. We also have freight alternatives for rail corridors. This is pending CSX partnerships. A technology project to advance the role of technology in transportation planning. We also list the federally funded transportation planning projects from our partners such as HART. This is a look at what we might do. This is pending the availability of staff time and budget and gives you a sense of some of the activities that are outside of those core requirements that we might take up in the next 2 years. A little bit on how we got here. So as mentioned, you saw an update on this at your meeting on April 15th. We had the draft UPWP available on our website for public comment beginning in March. This came before the TAC and CAC twice, once in March to assist with the development of projects, and then again in April for their comments. We also brought this to the Livable Roadways Committee, the BPAC, ITS, and Transportation Disadvantaged Coordinating Board at their meetings in March and April for review and comment. And then FDOT and Federal Highway had this available beginning on March 15th, and we received their comments by the middle of April to incorporate them into the document. We have done that, and all the comments we received are included in the plan. Things that we heard included from Federal Highway reflecting their comments in the plan, which we did. We also received feedback from FDOT on some language requirements, which we've incorporated into the document. The recommended action before you today is to adopt the fiscal year 25-26 Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP, which includes 2 resolutions, 24-1 and 24-2. Thank you for your time this morning. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Have any questions? Councilman Clendenin.
So where are we in discussions with CSX?
Councilman and board, thank you. We've received a number of contacts from board members and some of the partner agencies or relationships that we have with others in the community. So far, we've reached out to about 5 folks at CSX. A few of them returned the initial phone call. None of them have returned subsequent phone calls. I also know that board members that have standing relationships have reached out to their contacts, asking them to email me, and to this date, I haven't received any follow-up from any of those items. So in my mind, that's the biggest question mark for the UPWP, because without CSX involvement, we've had these conversations. Doesn't seem that there would be a lot of value in taking on that freight rail study, because there would be no commitment from CSX to implement any recommendations that come out of that. So my recommendation to the board would be to leave it in the UPWP. On the off chance that we get a contact that's committed to participating, if it doesn't happen, then we can either delay it out into the future and maybe take it up in the next UPWP cycle.
Is there anybody in the political leaders that have connections with CSX that we could go through as a go-between?
I'm certain that there are, but my first point of contact was with you all to see if you had any relationships with CSX. And I know that Charles and a couple others have.
I can try to work on that some more with CSX, especially the freight. We go to Jacksonville from time to time, and I think last time I commented on it, got some criticism, so I can say too much about it, but we'll reach out to CSX and try to help you with that.
There is one other option. A leader in this aspect of planning, Bob O'Malley, was recently contracted with a firm that does rail advocacy, and my understanding is that he has the ability to speak on behalf of CSX, Amtrak, Brightline, or at least interface with them more directly. He's currently not one of our general planning consultants, so there would be a little bit of behind-the-scenes work to establish an RFP, but that is one option that's on the table.
Any other comments? Commissioner Kemp?
I'll just say that I think that would be an excellent option to pursue in a way to go about this. This board in the past and others have worked with Bob O'Malley, and he's just, and he had been with CSX, I believe, for a number of years prior. I think that'd be an excellent way to pursue this.
Any other comments? Hearing none, can we have a motion? We have a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the FY 2025 Unified Planning Work Program. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposers? That motion is carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is Greg Greason. Good morning.
Staff. Thank you, Madam Chair. Wade Reynolds, Hillsborough TPO staff. Board members, I'm here to introduce Greg Kern with Gresham Smith, who will be presenting this project. This is the, thank you. This is the 2050 Needs Assessment for Major Projects. Thank you so much.
Good morning.
Good morning. Greg Kern with Gresham Smith. Good to see you all this morning. I want to talk about the needs assessment for major projects performance data. Basic outline of what we'll be discussing, the objective of this assessment, the methodology behind the project testing, the performance metrics, how we rank the projects, and then an economic benefits assessment. So the objective, it's part of the 2050 needs plan, of course, and we wanted to determine the efficiency and effectiveness, really, of major investment projects. Definition, major investment project is a higher capital project that has a greater influence on the region. And that could include managed lanes, interchanges, capacity projects, widenings, and premium transit. So as a base, we use the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Model, which of course is, covers District 7 and a little bit down into Manatee County. We use 2050 socioeconomic forecasts. Let me talk about that for a second. So 2050 forecasts that were provided by local agencies of population and of employment. So all that 2050 forecast data is behind the model. Just to give you some quick stats on the model, it's got over 3,000 highway lengths, 2,500 traffic analysis zones. So why I bring that up is that's where the socioeconomic data resides, in traffic analysis zones. So it's a pretty discrete distribution of socioeconomic data forecasts. And the model does include a transit network and mode choice. Just an interesting stat here. Person trips by county, the pie graph shows 47% of daily person trips are Hillsborough trips. And the other thing, when I talk about peak period here, in this case, we look at 7.2 million person trips. The peak period is not a peak hour. We don't have peak hours anymore for the most part. We have peak periods. So the peak period is 3 hours, from 3:30 to 6:30 p.m. So when we talk about that performance metric, that's what we're referring to. So there were over 20 separate projects analyzed. And instead of just putting all projects into the travel demand model and hitting the go button, it was developed in 10 different model scenarios. So 2 or 3 projects were combined in a model scenario. And that was done by the District 7 consultant. And we took that output from the District 7 consultant on the Tampa Bay model and used it as our input. The metrics that we use for project rankings cover these primary items: person hours of delay, access to jobs, and access to jobs can really be defined as a percentage improvement of getting trips from origins, basically residences, to commercial centers, retail centers, places of employment. So the access to jobs is a metric that we have good numbers on that really give us an idea if the project really advances an improvement of getting to work. Some other metrics: auto travel time, transit travel time. We have a couple indices there: planning time and reliability index. They are basically standard FHWA, federal highway type of indices that indicate how well your system is operating and what level of congestion overall you may have. And then the final was transit ridership. So we came up with a ranking of the projects. These are the top 10 projects. By the way, the ones that are highlighted, looks like they're purple on your screen. It could be light blue, like the South Tampa Rail and Metro Rapid Brandon toward the bottom. Those are transit projects. When you look at this list, those are the transit projects and where they came in on the ranking. And I'm going to talk about a couple key issues here with the ranking, but that's number 1 through 10, 11 through 20, and then number 21 through 24. A note here: these rankings are ranked by the project in the 10 different scenarios. So some of these projects, like an I-275 managed lane, or in fact, let me stop there, an I-275 managed lane may have been modeled in more than one scenario to see how it interacted with another project. So we gave separate rankings for those for this purpose. So one of the top ways to measure effectiveness of a project is person hours of delay. So this table here lists in descending order those projects that had the most impact on saving person hour delay. The I-4 managed lanes from I-275 out east to Polk County had over 22,000 peak period hours saved. On a daily basis, 55,000 hours saved. We're going to talk about the relevance of that number. And down the list here, we showed the different projects that had the highest daily hours saved. So now we put money to hours. So using USDOT guidance on the value of travel time, the second column there is the 2015 per hour cost that came out of the USDOT. 3 different trip types: personal trips, business trips, and then all trips combined. So let's just go to the bottom row, all trips. In 2015, that value per hour of traveling was $14.10. What we did in the final column is increase that for inflation to 2024 numbers. So the key number to look at there is $18.29 is the recognized economic value. So when I am saving an hour, I am saving $18.29 for every hour. So here's the part I like. It's when we combine the metrics and the dollar value. So the I-4 managed lanes, which is the #1 ranked project, had over 55,000 hours, daily hours saved throughout the network. So you implement that project throughout the network, that project saved 55,000 hours. Applying the $18 per hour factor, we have $1 million of daily savings from that project. So that gives you a little insight and perspective in terms of the impact of these projects. Then we looked at freight, the freight value. Just to shorten this up, the value of freight hours is over 4 times an individual's value of travel time. So 2024, that's $71 an hour, according to Federal Highway again. So when we talk about routes that have 10, 12% freight traffic on them, I-4, 275, et cetera, we've got an extra component of our improvement, 4 times what a regular person traveling would see as a value. So these are the types of valuations that we have done to really assess the economic value of these projects. Here's basically an application of that. So again, the I-4 managed lanes project, we have 12% daily truck percentage. So the freight movement value of that is $480,000 a day, every day. Again, just to give you an idea on the value here. So when we look at transit, the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Model has a transit component on top of the highway component. It may not always give you the quantification of some of these hours saved, things like that. So what we often turn to is a study or several case studies. And quite frankly, moving forward, the TPO, as you look at projects that are in the cost feasible list and look at when you're going to implement them, you would probably want to do a little more assessment of those transit projects on the economic value they actually provide in their select corridor. But I'll give you 2 examples here. Denver, RTD on the left side, similar to your airport to downtown proposed project. Had 7 rail stations, 24,000 daily riders, at $2.6 billion of economic impact The CAT system is up in Charlotte. I worked on that one way back, and it's a Lynx Blue Line, had 11 new stations, has 11 new stations, and the economic benefits were over $4 billion because of those projects. A little quote at the bottom there, according to American Public Transit Association, for every dollar invested in a premium transit project, you can generate $5 in local regional economic benefits. So those are the types of data points that need to be brought in the future as you look at specific projects. One other point as we develop project costs at this point, this is an FDOT slide, basically showing you the bid costs. So when a project is designed and then it's put out to bid to contractors, FDOT receives the bids. The short of it is, from November 2020 through July 2023, average bid prices increased 34%. So I want to make that point as we develop, as we're working right now with other consultants and with the TPO on developing the cost feasible network. There's a lot of variability there in costs. So when we're projecting out 10 years, 15, 20 years of what a cost might be, and possibly increasing it by a CPI inflation factor, recognize there's a lot of other factors in play. So it's just to give you that perspective when you're looking at costs. So the requested action is to accept the study and performance data, and then we are working to forward the major project ranking list for consideration in the cost feasible plan. That ends my presentation.
And thank you, Councilman Guida.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So my understanding earlier when Mr. Fernandez gave his report, the CAC voted against accepting this, but was it the technical committee? Is that what I heard? Moved to accept it. Okay, thank you very much.
Councilman Clendenin.
Yeah, I'm glad you had part 2 of that presentation, because for the first part of your list, my blood was starting to boil because it didn't really include the economic benefit that you showed in the transit options, and I was thinking, okay, there's a missing element to what you were first discussing. So thank you for including that second part of that presentation about was it 4 or 5 to 1 presentation on mass transit and the investment that we see when we put those, especially when we select those projects. I also want to make sure that as we look at these projects, you spoke about the airport to downtown connection, which I think is after our streetcars, number 2, is in my mind as far as what we need to go and as an economic catalyst in the city of Tampa. We need to not necessarily look at this because of the figures you just showed. The path of least resistance, I keep hearing people talk about the right-of-way corridor along the interstate to be able to make that happen. But I'm afraid if we follow that path of least resistance, we'll lose the economic benefit of development opportunities between the airport and downtown by using another corridor. So I think as we pursue this and we start looking at this, and whatever leaders are sitting in these seats after us, because I'm sure this is not going to happen while I'm still here, but I think people need to think about that as we pursue these opportunities for moving people. We also think about the economic impact of where we place this transit options and how important that is, because it's a catalyst and will return money to the coffers and pay for itself multiple times over if we're smart like that and not take those easy opportunities. I think that's what's key. We talk about the streetcar expansion. The streetcar expansion alone, without looking at the economic benefit of development in these areas, may seem like a fool's folly. But when you talk about the amount of development and the amount of money that is going to return back to the government, I think it's going to be a great investment for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kemp.
And the outside economic development, which, I think it's right before our eyes all the time. All you have to do is see West Tampa now or see Ybor City, and you can see that, but that's never calculated as part of this, correct? That's like you're just calculating what you see as the economic loss, I guess, of congestion.
That's true, because we're using the regional travel demand model as our primary input. So this is a more macro view, if you will, of these major projects and what economic benefits they can provide. And I think I mentioned before, my experience in doing this, when you start listing your cost feasible projects and then you start working on those projects, you're going to dig in with a finer comb, basically, to basically identify, do some market analyses, do some basic information with your land uses, et cetera. If I have a corridor and I'm extending transit, premium transit, or I'm putting new premium transit in, that's when you will see more specific benefits to that project. And that's the type of feasibility planning that is typically done on these type of major investments for premium transit.
Understand. I guess I wouldn't call it macro, because I would say this is just a really slice of this that doesn't really give a picture that is a macro picture. And you're saying that macro picture comes in the feasibility on the transit or whatever. I get that that's the way it's done. It's just, to me, it's just like a very slim part of the picture. When it's done this way, it's kind of like baked in to show certain things that rise, like I-4, and other things that wouldn't rise, because it is a narrow picture of that, just based on traffic standing still. And I'm just trying to get this a little more, but when you look at the there is I just wanted to remember, because when I saw this run by me, when you have the map up there with all the different colors, you have red, that's to out on the keys. There's red in that map. All the other, I remember asking about what that was, and I can't remember what it was.
We're trying to find that slide. So it's the county map, the regional planning model map area? Oh, or that one?
What is the red there?
Okay, I'm sorry, thank you for pointing that out. So these, and I have to get my glasses out for this again, but the red is a roadway widening. So those are your capacity projects, like Lithia and State Road 60. Those are your capacity projects.
Oh, that was State Road 60, State Road 39, and Lithia Pinecrest. So you have those on there, and you modeled those.
Right. And the bright green, the thicker, more bold, is your premium transit routes. So all the green up there are your...
That's branded to USF?
Correct.
When you say premium transit, what do you define that as?
Sure, sorry. So not local bus service, not express bus service, but it could be bus rapid transit, where you are, and you've got some BRT, of course, with HART now. So premium transit is bus rapid transit, where you provide a better user experience. You're trying to get choice riders, not to get too deep. And then premium transit light rail, like the CATS system up in Charlotte, or it could be heavy commuter rail, like Sunrail in Central Florida. So those are all, they're premium transit getting over to commuter heavy rail transit.
Yeah, so I guess with these kinds of things, I wouldn't say we have any BRT now. I mean, I know people sometimes describe Nebraska Avenue as that, but that's not really. I mean, and I wouldn't say we have any, I would disagree definitionally, I'll just say, with the premium transit. I think the premium transit should be defined by frequency, because that's what really makes it happen, not by kind of having fancier things. But sometimes BRT, if done correctly or done actually with some investment and some, unlike the Nebraska Avenue, but like a truly more BRT system, can or should increase the ridership and the route and the frequency, I would imagine. I had a couple other questions too. So but I guess because the airport to downtown and downtown to USF, which has always been our eternal L that we have talked about having some kind of premium transit or more frequency on. But those are, as I understand, they're already in our as priorities. So that's why these weren't studied here, is that correct?
Commissioner, the two examples of premium transit, and in a moment I'll take a step back and kind of explain our definition, that appear in the tip are the Florida-Tampa arterial BRT projects and then the streetcar extension. And so when Greg or any of TPO staff are talking about premium transit, we're really talking about fixed guideway. The frequency is one aspect of that, but you can bump up frequency with the local bus routes. A fixed guideway transit system really provides the certainty that developers need before they invest money in a project. For a transit project to be fixed in the ground, unable to deviate route, that's really what they're looking for before they decide to invest the money. And so even if we amplified the frequency on Nebraska, for example, there's no physical limitations to having HART deviate that route in the future. You would be looking at something along the lines of a dedicated lane only operable for transit usage, or something fixed in the ground like a rail track.
Well, when you say fixed, it's only rail track that you're saying? Because, I mean, all over Seattle, they have buses with wheels that are BRT. They're articulated double buses. They're coming every 5 minutes. And some of them have catenary, and then the wires above, they're electric, and then they open up and they don't have the wires later when they go into suburbia. So I would really very much disagree with a definition of fixed with only rail. Just saying, and those can be very fixed and attract development and attract, I'm just saying I don't want to have that be definitionally. I just think that that's a problem too. And I wondered about freight hours. If you looked, if anything was considered in terms of freight hours on our rail, because the freight hours seem to have been calculated by highway, but not by rail. So that wasn't looked at all?
That was not part of the model.
Okay.
So we did not have that out.
Because I would think that that would be an important part of the model. I also wondered about in terms of moving people. We do have Amtrak that is doing that now from Tampa to Orlando along that I-4 corridor. We, of course, don't have the high-speed rail from 11 years ago that Governor Scott, now Senator, killed for us, $2.4 billion. But we do have Amtrak. Have we had any idea if we were to increase Amtrak service? It's only once a day. And I-4 is certainly, it could desperately need something, more like that. So has that been considered in any of this, the Amtrak that we already have? And if we were to increase service or frequency, if that could be done, how that would impact on this?
Sure. Intercity train and bus, like Red Bus and Mega Bus, is not included in this assessment. That's correct. And just to build off of what Executive Director Wong said, the fixed guideway is better definition for premium transit. And for instance, we worked on the limo system in downtown Orlando, and we had to have over 51% of the roadway with an actual separated lane for the bus. But then the other 49% of the roadway, it could be in mixed traffic if you can't do it all fixed. But the fixed guideway doesn't mean rail necessarily. It just means a dedicated path somewhere in the corridor.
Right, and that's kind of what I was saying.
Yes, exactly.
Not to have necessarily rail, but we could certainly have, I've been going forever for BRT from USF to downtown, but as long as, what people don't understand is 70% of transit is operational. Correct. It's not this capital investment that really makes it, and we have not had the dollars for any kind of reasonable operational investment to make the frequency happen and to make these really prior, premium, important critical routes that any transit system has to have them with any kind of reasonable frequency that's you know, I know we've heard this before, but I think this is the time to look at it again. And this is just looking at capital. And transit doesn't come up very high or perform in this because it's not, until, you know, we have operational money to do frequency, whether, you know, you can do all the capital investing you want, but that's you have it here. It is, again, baked in to really rise with cars and automobiles and highways and roads, rather than the kinds of options and the kinds of value and moving, just in terms of congestion dollars, not to mention development dollars, that transit provides. So I'll just, you know, I'd just like to analyze it a little more deeply in that way, but just my thoughts on the report.
Thank you. Is it Commissioner Worcester?
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I'm referencing your tables, specifically Table 4 on your transit performance metrics. There's a couple I was unfamiliar with. Scenario 3, South Tampa Rail to the Southwest Tampa Peninsula on a CSX rail line.
Yes.
Is that something that, I'm not familiar with the project, is that something that's already been, I mean, we're talking about how we can't get any responses, unfortunately, from CSX, so is this just an idea that y'all are floating, or?
Yes, Commissioner and Board. All of these projects were proposals for projects for us to test in the model coming from either the local governments or from board members on their own. We didn't play a significant role in developing these projects. We really look to the local governments to make those suggestions to us because they're most familiar with the needs of their jurisdictions.
Okay, so I just want to make sure on this scenario, on your transit travel time change in minutes, you're indicating that, in your opinion, a Metro Rapid Brandon would have a net negative effect. Is that what basically the results? I just want to make sure I understand your chart. I didn't see a key, so.
Just to address the first part of that, the South Tampa Multimodal Corridor is part of the City of Tampa's RIA grant application, so that's where that one came from. Speaking to the East-West Metro Rapid, that was a reduction in travel time.
It showed reduction in travel time. If we could, I'm sorry, if we could clarify the question.
No, the one from USF to Brandon.
Yes. Not on the table that's being presented. Let's see.
Would you, okay, did you?
Oh, it's on these rankings.
It's on page 13.
You are correct, Commissioner, that a couple of those projects did show an increase in travel time.
That's what that represents?
Yes,
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. I know we need to move on, but Mr. Kern, this is a good report. Thank you very much, and my comments have nothing to do with your report. It's, I don't know, I don't want to sound naive, but this is part of my frustration when we come here month after month, to me, is I know we have to do certain reports to check the box for various federal and state requirements, require us to do certain things. But I just personally, as a small city mayor, I get a little frustrated that this board seems to continuously act on the tactical level and not the strategic level. And if we don't act on the strategic level, I don't know who's supposed to do that because we're the TPO. And so there's only a few priorities here, and all of these various studies that we must have hundreds of them on the shelf, and in 3 years when there's new people sitting here, they're going to do the same ones over again, right? And so they don't seem to inform us to do anything. We just talk about the type of sound walls we're going to put on a section of the interstate, and we talk about things like that, and we're just tactical. And how come we can't figure out a way to operate strategically? These needs are not competing They're all legitimate. And when Tampa talks about the need for transit in the urban core and the connectivity between USF and downtown and West Shore and the airport, that's a priority. That's a very legitimate need for the urban core. They're not ignorant to what's going on in Riverview, but this is what the priority is here. But the people in Riverview, I'm using Riverview, but the people in certain parts of the county, they don't want their tax dollars going towards building stuff in the urban core that they're never going to use. Likewise, there are people in Tampa who don't want their money going to widen Lithia Pinecrest, which they don't even know where it is. So really, it's up to us to kind of piece together a funding scheme that kind of works for everybody, that we can build things in the urban core that are vital to our continued economic development in the urban core. They absolutely are. We have to get people to their jobs. We have to get them to the residential. We need to build this and stop talking about it. At the same time, we need to understand the reality of the east and south part of the county where the housing is exploding, and we have two-lane roads and schools at the end of two-lane roads, and people can't get to school. Those are legitimate needs as well. But we get trapped into this asking about, the details of one report or another report, and we spend hours here going over these reports, and we never get anything done. We don't ever talk, okay, how does that report inform our strategic vision for transportation? We'll do that. And we'll put this on the shelf. We'll never talk about this again until we have to revise it. We'll get mired in a discussion next month about some tactical project of a sidewalk or whatever it is. And that's why we can't ever seem to move forward, in my opinion. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, rain on everybody's parade here and be Mr. Doom and Gloom, but it's frustrating. I mean, we've got a great group of people here, very smart, dedicated people from different walks of life. We've got a terrific staff. We're drowning in information. We're drowning in data. There's no shortage of data. And yet we can't seem to figure out how to put our money into meaning, not total failure. We do some good. I don't want the public to think, we do, but we could do better. So anyway, I'm done.
Commissioner Coyne.
Well, Mayor Ross, I think all of us share your frustration having sat around these tables and had these discussions year after year after year. But the element that I think is missing is that there have been multiple efforts over the years to find funding sources for these projects, and without having a discussion of the last 12 years of history in Hillsborough County, the bottom line of the matter is that we really aren't any further along today than we were a decade ago when it comes to finding a dedicated funding source that everybody can agree upon to divide up to use for some of these needs. And as we've been unable to do that, the needs have grown greater and greater and greater. Congestion's gotten worse, the county has grown, and the cost of doing projects, as we saw from the report, continues to go up. I saw a 34% number in terms of what things cost. And I've been criticized for pointing to the CIT as though it's going to be some sort of panacea for all this, because we know that it isn't. It's not going to be enough to solve a lot of the problems that we have. But we have to start somewhere. And once we have some money, I think at least you'll see some of these projects be able to rise up, actually get funded and get done. But there's no question that the biggest frustration of sitting at this table over the years is that there is plenty of good information. There are plenty of good projects out there. We all know of a lot of different things that we can do to solve, or not solve, but make great strides in reducing congestion and improving safety. But without money, it is just going to continue to be talk.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hurtak.
Thank you. I agree with pretty much what everyone said today, and I agree.
with Mayor Ross. There are a lot of studies, and I have no idea. I assume a lot of them are required by either the federal government or the state, which is what it seems to be. Like this, I believe, is a requirement for the state. But what's frustrating about this particular study is that we are comparing apples to oranges. We don't have the right ability to really look, and which really frustrates me, because there has to be a study out there or a way to balance those. It has to be done somewhere else in the country. And if it hasn't been, whoever creates that is going to make a ton of money, because every community is really dealing with this, any sort of metro area. How do you balance and how do you see the cost of transit versus cars versus bringing goods and services? And there just has to be a way that we can come up with a top 10 list that makes more sense. And it doesn't mean that the things that are on the top 10 list aren't critical, because I believe they are. I mean, everyone here would agree that I-4 is probably number one. Everyone. No one argues with that. But then again, how do we fund it? But bringing the correct data, and I agree, I don't want to keep getting studies that we can't do anything with, but at the same time, if the studies aren't bringing the information that we actually need to get things done, that's the frustration for me. So again, I don't think it's on staff at all, but there has to be something out there that can have a better balance of the cost per, saved for transit riding versus, road widening. And because the road widening or the road improvements also improve transit or have the ability to help transit. So it's kind of all put together, and I see why the CAC had problems with this, because I just don't feel it's an apples to oranges comparison, and I think it's incredibly hard to put these major projects together. I don't see how this informs for us in a way that is helpful.
Thank you. Commissioner Owen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Facts are facts are really stubborn things. It's an old saying that we use in law, and I could have told you what was going to happen when I saw these studies come out. I could have probably, and this is not a slight on any of my colleagues, but I could have told you what each person probably would have been advocating with once they saw these studies. Lithia Pinecrest Road, for example, would have cost $84 million to do not too long ago. Okay, so we find ourselves in a lot of these situations because we have been focused, I think, on the urban core too much. We have been focused on mass transit. When mass transit, well, I'm not saying it's not important to the urban core. It is a back seat to the problems that we have, for example, in East and South County because of development. I think that this is what this study shows. It's factual. I'm sure we could create a study if we hired the right people that had the right opinions to say something otherwise. But these are facts, folks. These are facts, and they really can't be argued with. So I appreciate the report. I wasn't going to speak until Mayor Ross spoke, just because I too find myself tired of saying the same thing, and these meetings getting a little divisive, where it feels like one side of the town is against the other side of the town. Look, I think Tampa is extremely important. It's our urban core. It's where our major job center are. It's where our entertainment and our football stadiums and hockey stadiums. But at the same time, we really need to prioritize what's going to move people in downtown, but what's going to move vehicles in the unincorporated parts of Hillsborough County. That's the majority of the voters. That's the majority of the people of Hillsborough County. And I think we need to try not to lose sight of that. Sure, we all have our objectives. If I was on the city council, I would be screaming mass transit myself. I feel like that's your job. But we got to think as a TPO, I think, collectively, what's good for the entire county. I think that's what we're here for. And at the end of the day, we're also here to get grants. I mean, to me, I'd look at the TPO as, how do we get more? It's why I'm for us becoming regional, okay? Because I think we have a better opportunity to get more grant money at the end of the day. So I appreciate the report. Again, I agree with you, Mayor Ross. I don't know what good it does, but I do appreciate it, and I do think it's extremely factual. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Clendenin.
Yeah, I'll try to bring some kind of this in for a landing, but a couple of observations. One, I don't think, anybody here would argue that Lithia Pinecrest is a mess, that we have a need to do something with the Crosstown extension to be able to move people into South County. So I find it kind of odd, the characterization about us versus them, because I don't feel that way. And I look at the assessments, and especially my role here on the TPO, I look at all of these things as important to the county and to the region as we develop a plan moving into 2050. So I don't look at that at all. I'll also take issue with about this focus, this impression that there's a focus on the urban core. And we have a lot of discussion about the urban core, but I would challenge you to go into the urban core and find one transit project, one road project, one anything. I mean, urban cores have been a mess, and all the investment has been outside of the urban core, because of course that's where the growth has been. I mean, we've had a lot of growth. We've had to build infrastructure. We've had to build things outside of the urban core. But within the city of Tampa, I mean, show me, because boy, it's escaping me. It hasn't happened. We talk about it. We talk about the need, but the investment has not occurred. You know, now FDOT and what they've done with 275, and now I guess we're going to get the West Shore interchange, but it hasn't happened yet. But we're going to see that. But it's just the investment is not within the city of Tampa. We are the neglected stepchildren thus far in the last at least decade of investment in the city. My question would be to try to take this in for a landing. The consequences of accepting this report, because again, I kind of concur with the opinions that we've heard from a couple of my fellow board members, that it's a very narrow slice of looking at these projects. And again, I think the biggest frustration is that everybody, I don't think anybody that is being unbiased could say that any one of these projects is any more important than another. I mean, again, yeah, if I lived in Fishhawk Ranch, I'd be crying at the top of my lungs about Lithia Pinecrest, or if I lived in South County about the need to extend the Selman. Hell, I think we should extend it further to east-west as well, not just north-south, but east-west, as far as having a method to move people and vehicles and goods and services. But what is the consequences of accepting this report? Is it going to be, like Mayor Ross just says, another report that's going to sit on the shelf because we're government? Is there really any true consequence of this? Is it going to direct funding? Is it going to direct the way we prioritize these projects? What does it mean to us when we as a body accept this?
Board, I think that's a good question to end this conversation on. This activity is coming to a head, or will be very soon. Accepting this report or recommending approval of it is one piece of potentially three factors that should result in your decision-making process about which projects end up in the cost feasible plan. So there is the technical report, the performance metrics that we're presenting to you today. There's also the public feedback, which gives you a good idea of what the general public across all of Hillsborough County wants to see built. And then there's the staff recommendation. When we synthesize the technical report, the public feedback, we will offer recommendations to you about what are the most beneficial projects to move forward. We're not going to be looking entirely at the technical report, and I advocate that you don't either, because we know, based on what we saw and what we've heard today, that there is significant strategic value in some of the projects, even though they're not scoring quite as high. It's a limitation in the data. We're well aware of that. We will be basing our recommendations to you on technical analysis, public feedback, and strategic value. This will be coming to a head because we're anticipating that we're going to adopt the LRTP in October. I believe that these conversations are going to gear up really fast, so there's going to be a lot coming at you in short order. June tip hearing, August hearing, or August meeting, and September meeting, we should be bringing this in for a landing.
And one other question, what about funding for these projects?
All of the projects that land in the cost feasible plan have to show that there is funding reasonably available to deliver them. The cost feasible list is not a very long list of projects. It may even be shorter for the 2050 plan because some revenue sources that were under consideration previously are no longer. So it may be a very succinct list, but to end up in the cost feasible plan, we have to show that there's funding available through the state, locally available. We can't include grants, which is why many of the transit projects don't end up in the cost feasible plan, because we can demonstrate maybe a local match, but we can't guarantee the FTA will offer the grant. And so just a preview of what the cost feasible plan will look like. It will traditionally is most of the state projects in FDOT CIS cost feasible plan, most of the projects in the FDOT non-CIS cost feasible plan, handful of local highway projects, maybe one transit project. Most of the transit projects end up in the illustrative needs list because we can't show that we have a dedicated funding source for them. Getting way ahead of myself, we'll walk you through all of this in June, August, and September, but I think it's helpful to give you a little bit of a preview of what's to come.
Councilwoman Hurtak.
This just goes back to what I was saying earlier. If we can't use grants, it just seems like we're throwing darts at the wall and hoping to hit something. If we can't use grant funding to prioritize, I'm assuming that these are all ties that the state or the federal government has tied our hands to be able to use to consider?
Yeah, the definition, thank you, Councilwoman. The definition of reasonably available funding is very narrow in scope. And so discretionary grants, I don't believe can be considered as reasonably available, because it depends to a large degree on availability of funding at the federal level and competitiveness of the project. What that translates to in practical terms is that we can include transit projects in the LRTP, but they may appear in the illustrative needs. That still gives us the green light to go after grants as they become available, but most of those transit projects won't appear in the cost feasible plan.
Thank you. And I'm not even talking about transit, just overall grants for projects, because it seems that in order to get grants for projects, they need to be on a list showing that they're a priority. And if we can't get the funding to put them on the list for the priority, then it just feels like we're going in circles. That's just very frustrating. I just have to say that.
Thank you. Commissioner Wonstu.
I was just going to say, if we're done, I'll move to accept the Access 2050 needs plan report.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposes? That motion is carried. Okay, we're going to move right on the 24th State of the System report. Connor, good morning.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I'm Connor Trejos McDonald, here to present the 2024 State of the System report. All right. For background, the State of the System report, or SOS report, serves as the federally required congestion management and crash mitigation process. The last major update of the State of the System report was conducted in late 2021, and there have been some updates since then. As done in the past, the report covers all 5 categories of the funding buckets, consistent with the LRTP development. And I'd like to cover the main points with you all and provide some key takeaways from each section. For state of good repair and resilience, we evaluated pavement condition, bridge condition, and transit assets. For pavement and bridge condition on the national highway system, we met all 4 of our goals set, and those goals are set through the performance measures, you may remember. For transit assets, our previous goal of having the total support vehicles or equipment less than or equal to 19%, meeting or exceeding the useful life benchmark. And based on the data collected from HART and the National Transit Database, the actual 2022 percentage was 60%, thus this goal is not being met. In addition, passenger and parking facilities, which include parking garages, park and ride lots, rail terminals, and bus transfer stations, for examples, they rated below 3 on the term scale, and we're at 38% greater than 10% goal. Here we've provided a map of the pavement condition index of public roads in the county, red being more serious condition and green being in better condition. And this is in the report, so I'll allow you to evaluate that as well. For Revision 0, we evaluated fatal and serious injury crashes by mode. In 2021, we saw a record high number of fatalities, so we researched that a bit more and found that 16% involved an impaired driver, 63% occurred at nighttime, 46% involved a vulnerable user, and 7% involved an impaired driver. Although we know and recognize that any fatality or serious injury is too many, we wanted to compare how our region is doing across Florida. So as you can see, Hillsborough is number 2 in fatal crashes, and I believe number 3, the third region in Florida for serious injury crashes. And the map on the right shows a heat map of those fatal and serious injury crashes overlaid with the high injury network. For smart cities, we evaluated reliability and truck travel time reliability. We also took a look at the volume to capacity ratio, finding a few roadways that you may or may not expect to be over a 1.5 ratio, and VC meaning the comparison of roadway demand with supply. So anything above a 1, it would indicate the roadway facility is operating at its capacity, at or above its capacity. As requested in the past, we also took a further look at air quality. In 2023, 71% of days were at a good quality index score. Further, 5.7% of the county's population lives within 150 meters of a high volume roadway, and that's 50% above the national average. 19% live within 300 meters, and 21% of those living in a Justice 40 environmental justice area live within 300 meters of a high volume roadway. We also evaluated transit or real choices when not driving for various modes. We found that a great majority of Hillsborough County residents, 79%, do not have access to what is deemed to be good or acceptable transit facilities, and this number is lower for workers. We also found that 57% and 54% respectively of residents have no access to walking or biking facilities. For ridership levels, we found that ridership is increasing since the pandemic, but not quite at pre-pandemic levels. We also evaluated travel time to key economic spaces via auto and transit. You'll see that Plant City East does not have a transit measure, and that's because Plant City East does not have transit. Some other key takeaways from this is that Sun City Center has the greatest difference with almost a 2-hour transit time and 25-minute auto time. On average, utilizing transit over a personal vehicle will add 34 minutes of travel time to trips to key economic spaces. As far as access to health destinations via alternative modes, we found that 37% of residents had access to good walking facilities, while only 6% had good transit access to schools, and 10% had good transit access to supermarkets. Finally, we did evaluate the 2045 LRTP major projects, and in that analysis, we found that 43% of interstates and 24% of other roadways are currently over capacity. To wrap it all up, I have a few key takeaways. By 2050, the population is expected to grow by 35% and employment by 45%. The county continues to face significant challenges in maintaining and improving performance of the transportation network. And finally, average commute times are rising and congestion is producing additional safety concerns, and thus smart and effective investment is needed. With that, the recommended action today is to accept the 2024 State of the System report, and I'll take any comments or questions.
Have any questions? See none. We have a motion.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive the 2024 State of the System report. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposers? That motion is carried. Thank you so much, Connor.
Thank you.
We'll move right into the Executive Director's report.
Good morning, CPO board members.
Good morning.
My Executive Director's report. The Tampa Bay TMA meeting on May 17th will be hosted at PSTA headquarters in St. Petersburg. Last week when I announced it, we had at the time secured a venue at District 7, but in light of the recent events, there are enhanced security protocols, and that building is not for the time or not at this time open to the public. And so we decided to shift venues to one which is accessible. And so again, it'll be held at PSTA headquarters in St. Petersburg on May 17th, and I emailed you all that information yesterday. The TIP public hearing will be on June 12th in the second floor boardroom of this building. At 6 p.m., we'll start the regular portion of the meeting, and we have 2 action items and 1 status report on that agenda. Once that convenes, we'll move into the public hearing to adopt the tip. That usually makes for a really long evening, and we can offer refreshments to you, so my staff should reach out to you either today or tomorrow, asking if there's any requests. We want to keep you hydrated and nourished so that you can stay awake for the entire meeting. The SCTPA meeting to adopt regional priorities will be held on June 14th. We're still working to secure a venue. We believe it'll be hosted at District 1 headquarters in Bartow, but again, in light of what happened at District 7, we're ensuring that District 1 headquarters will be available to us, and we should have confirmation on that within a week. I have 2 items that were not added to the agenda because we didn't get them in time. The first is that at the September TMA meeting, we'll be discussing small cities representation. I think it would be a disservice to the TMA and to this board to make a decision on that before we get feedback from Plant City and Temple Terrace. And so I'd like to offer to make a presentation to your commission and to your city council ahead of that September meeting so that we can discuss some options. The last item not on the agenda comes from the HART board meeting, which happened just this past Monday. An action item was initiated at the HART board meeting to elect a new HART representative and alternate to serve on this TPO board. That action item was tabled, and there was a little bit of confusion about the purpose of it. That action item was not apropos of our discussion about how a regional board would handle transit operators. That action was initiated by HART staff to reverse course. Up until the previous HART CEO, the HART board's representative to the TPO had always been a member of the HART board. When Ms. LeGrand became the CEO of HART, she changed that. She was the HART representative to this board, and that just continued when Scott Drainville was appointed. And so that was not a TPO decision. That was HART staff seeking to get a HART board member to fill in for staff. So I just wanted to give you all a heads up. At the HART board meeting, the board directed HART Legal to get in contact with either Cameron or me to return to a HART board meeting and give a little bit of context to that. We're happy to do that. We're waiting on them to contact us. That's it for my report.
Any questions? Commissioner Woolster?
I just wanted to say the reason it was so important for me to table the HART item is because we had just had open communication about how we would make sure that we didn't utilize one of the agencies as a way to backdoor in more elected officials. And I didn't want us to make such a significant change, and it seemed like we were discussing and negotiating in bad faith to the other parties, create apprehension. What I would prefer is that if we do agree that HART should just be an advisory role similar to the secretary, then we should just go ahead and do that now if we already agreed to that, and remove the issue from consideration from being even needing to be done at the HART level. So that's where that really came from. Thank you.
You want to make a motion? Well, hold on one second. Let me hear from
I was just going to say I concur with Commissioner Wassel on this.
I don't know that it's appropriate to make a motion at that at this time, but it's fine if we bring a future item to the next meeting to resolve the question.
Sure. I think if you want to discuss this further, it'd be a good idea to have as an agenda item. Just to be clear, though, Commissioner, are you talking about a change to the composition of the TPO board, like to convert the HART seat to like a non-voting advisor in the same mode as FDOT, or I just want to clarify
what we had discussed at the last meeting, which was that, which I almost got unanimous consent, I believe, so.
Sure, yeah, and I thought that discussion was specific to the potential larger merge MPO. I just want to make sure were you talking about making a change to this existing MPO?
I'm saying that if we were going to change that seat, that I would prefer that it's just us doing the full house cleaning of it at this level, rather than us changing HART to being another board member and it presenting that we would try and do that. I understand why the Port and Aviation Authority want to be on the regional board, and I don't want it to be perceived as we would try and do that in the future. So I don't think that it's appropriate to make a motion yet, but that was why, for those of you not on the HART board, that's why we tabled the motion. That's why I wanted to table the motion anyways.
Okay. Well, we'll wait till y'all come to the HART board meeting. Okay? Okay. Old business? Any old business?
Yes, Chair, I'll speak
Okay.
to this as well. When we presented the multimodal counts report to you all back in February, I believe, there were some questions about what value that report can add to our planning work. By the time you're hearing me speak on it, our staff have already sent a report to each of your local government's planning staff. We had some money available left in that budget, so we asked the consultant to go back out and produce a little bit of additional maps to analyze the bike and ped counts compared to traffic crashes. And so this gives us an idea of what are the hot spots where bike and ped crashes are occurring and what the bike ped counts are. Again, we had a limited budget left over, but it was just enough to do some additional analysis. So we produced that, and the consultant and our staff have sent it over to your planning teams.
Okay, any questions? Okay. Any other old business, new business? Councilwoman Hurtak?
In light of this discussion earlier, I think it would be useful that for each of these studies, reports, action items, show either on the agenda or on the presentation itself, like who's requiring it or who requested it. Just to get an idea of, is this a FDOT requirement? Is this a federal requirement? Why are we doing this study? I don't know if anybody likes that idea, but.
It's a great idea. Any other new business? Hearing none, 11:26, we adjourn. Thank you so much.